Welcome to this program. This video is ran under the program Owewe Bereahia, that knowledge is beyond strength. After 40 years of carrying out development research, implementing development projects, and working with people at the margins of development, women and youth who operate in the informal sector have realized that what we need in society is to restore the conscience of society in an age of capture. And what has inspired me is reflecting back to the gift I was given by one of my chief examiners during my viva voce at the University of Cambridge, Professor Michael O'Connor. So, the symbolism of the gift. The conclusion of the viva voce at the University of Cambridge is traditionally viewed as a moment of ultimate academic validation, a transition into the elite echelons of global knowledge. Yet, the gift of the book, Who Controls Industry in Kenya, 1969, by the National Council of Churches of Kenya by Professor Michael O'Connor, served as a radical reorientation. It suggested that the purpose of high-level intellectual labor is not the pursuit of prestige, but the service of a specific, grounded struggle. The book, published by the National Council of Churches in Kenya, NCCK, was more than a socio-economic report. It was a manifesto of the prophetic imagination. It symbolized a church that refused to remain in the sanctuary or the structures of the new republic were being forged in the fires of neocolonialism. Today, as we reflect on the Lenten season, a time of wilderness, temptation, and eventual renewal, we must ask how that prophetic flame was extinguished, and more importantly, how it can be rekindled in an age of capture. The prophetic imagination beyond the royal consciousness. To understand the prophetic whole, we must distinguish it from mere social activism, as suggested by a famous theologian, Walter Brueggemann, who describes prophetic imagination as the capacity to evoke a consciousness and perception alternative to the royal consciousness of the dominant culture. The royal consciousness is characterized by affluence, oppressive social policies, and a religion of static triumphalism that justifies the status quo. In 1969, the Kenyan church understood this by asking who controls industry in Kenya. The church was acting as a social midwife. It recognized the political independence, Madaraka, was a hollow shell if the economic levers remained in the hands of a few or were merely transferred from a colonial elite to a local comprador elite class. The prophetic role, as seen in this historical context, is characterized by two movements. One, criticizing, dissecting the current reality to show that the way things are is not the way they have to be. It is the act of dismantling the myth of inevitability, energizing, providing a vision of hope that empowers the marginalized to believe in a different future. When the church or the professional class loses this imagination, they become mere administrators. They stop asking, is this just? And start asking, is this efficient? This shift marks the beginning of moral erosion. The church as conscience resisting capture. Bishop Henry Ukuru, a towering figure in African liberation theology, famously argued that the church is the conscience of society, Ukuru 1984. A conscience does not govern, but it haunts. It sits on the shoulder of power and whispers the truth when power wishes to lie to itself. However, we currently live in an era of moral and ethical capture. This capture is primarily driven by neoliberalism, an ideology that extends the logic of the market into the aspect of human life. In neoliberal framework, human beings are reduced to human capital and relationships are reduced to transactions. When Bishop Okulu called the church to avoid capture, he was warning against the killing of the prophetic mission. The killing happens through institutional silence when the church becomes an appendage of the state to maintain its tax-exempt status or social standing. The gospel of prosperity are the originical capture where material wealth is viewed as a primary indicator of divine favor and blessings, effectively mirroring the neoliberal grid. Professionalization, when ministry becomes a career ladder rather than a sacrificial calling to minister to the poor, the prisoners, and the downtrodden. The conscience is silenced when the cost of speaking out becomes higher than the comfort of remaining silent. In Lent, we are reminded that Christ's wilderness temptation was essentially an offer of capture, that the devil offered him bread, power, prestige in the exchange of the abandonment of the prophetic mission. The smell of the sheep, radical proximity and cultural humility. In 2013, Pope Francis used the metaphor that the ministers must smell like the sheep. He wanted that ministers might be shepherds with the smell of the sheep. This is a modern antidote to this capture. It is the call to radical proximity. To smell like the sheep, one must walk in the same mud as the sheep. It is the rejection of the ivory tower, whether the tower is academic, ecclesiastical, or corporate. This requires two specific virtues: compassion as solidarity. Literally refers to a movement in one's gut. It's not pity handed down from a height. It is suffering with a person. Cultural humility. As defined in modern social work and ministry, this is the ability to maintain an interpersonal stance that is other-oriented in relation to aspects of cultural identity that are important to the person. It is the admission that the expert, the PhD from Cambridge, or the theological qualification do not have answers, and we must learn from the poor, as he kept on emphasizing. The crisis of modern professional is that we have become sanitized. We serve the poor from behind glass partitions or through digital interfaces or via policy papers. We analyze their poverty in vivas, conferences, in hotels, and we are sheltered and surrounded by gated and walled universities where nobody can enter, but we do not share their air or experience. The anatomy of modern capture, why we have lost our way. Most of us, religious and non-religious, have been captured. This is the Lenten wilderness of our professional lives. We have become moral technicians rather than moral readers. Why does capture happen? The idol of security. We are afraid to speak truth to power because we fear of our mortgages, our reputations, our promotions, and our career trajectories. The complexity trap. We convince ourselves that systemic evils like global, local, and national inequality or corruption are too complex for simple moral stances, leading to the paralysis of the soul, the loss of imagination. We can no longer imagine a world where industry is not driven by extraction and exploitation. We have accepted the end of history narrative where neoliberalism is the only viable system, restoring the prophetic role, a framework for restoration. This restoration requires a deliberate decapture process. First, the social audit of the self. Just as the NCCK audited industry in 1969, we must audit our professional lives. We must ask, who does my work actually serve? Does it reinforce the walls of exclusion or exploitation and extraction, or does it help tear them down? This is the prophetic audit. It requires looking into our bank statements, our calendars, and our professional choices through the lens of the marginalized. Embracing inconvenient ethics. Ethics in the neoliberal world is often reduced as compliance, following the rules of the game to avoid litigation. Prophetic ethics, however, is about covenant. It's about being faithful to the human person, even when it is unprofitable. Restoration happens when we choose the human over the system, when we refuse a lucrative case that harms a community, or when a priest refuses to bless a corrupt politician's donation. Cultivating prophetic communities. The prophet is rarely a lone wolf. The prophet is usually sustained by a remnant. The NCCK was a council. Bishop Okulu was part of a movement. To resist capture, we must find communities of resistance, groups of like-minded professionals, and believers who hold each other accountable and provide a safety net for those who dare to speak out. Return to the margin. The center, the house of power, is where the capture happens. The margins is where the prophetic imagination is born. To restore our mission, we must intentionally spend time at the margins of our society. We must listen to those who have been silenced by industry. This is where we find the smell of the sheep that washes away the scent of the palace. Conclusion: from the viva to the vineyard. The journey from the viva at Cambridge reflection on the Lenten campaign is a journey from competence to conscience. Academic excellence is a tool, but it's not the destination. The destination is the prophetic mission, the work of ensuring that industry serves the people and the church serves the sheep. As we move through Lent, we are called to change, a change of mind. We must move away from the neoliberal capture that tells us we are mere cogs in a machine and move towards the prophetic role that tells us we are the conscience of our society. By embracing compassion, cultural humility, and the smell of the sheep, we can restore the imagination necessary to build a world that reflects the dignity of the human being. The question is no longer just who controls industry in Kenya, but who controls the heart of the worker. If the answer is the spirit of justice, then the prophetic mission is alive. So with this video, what I have attempted to do is that our current development problems are more of moral issues, ethical issues, rather than economic. We need more love, we need more conscience, we need more justice, so that we can realize the objectives of equality in development. So thank you very much for listening to me. And as I said at the beginning, these videos are supposed to be lessons, alternative lessons, for people who are interested in another perspective of development. Development that is based on the margins, development that is not based on exploitation, extraction, and destruction of each other. It's based on love. It's based on the African concept of Utu and Ubuntu, which is the true Christian life of taking poor of the of the downtrodden, the widows, the orphans, and the prisoners. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope you subscribe, share, and like the video. Thank you very much. Hope to see you in the next video.